Hey, we are back with just another amazing panel of guests. Our first panel was, I know you guys gleaned so much, and we have a new crew, and instead of going around the table and me messing it up, we're gonna start with ladies first. Introduce yourself, what you're doing now, and anything you want the world to know about you.
Great, thank you. I'm Rebekah Latham. I am the CEO of Girl Scouts of New Mexico Trails.
And a mom, and and just an incredible person.
She is.
I'm her helper, Steve Stucker.
We did church announcements together for a long time, so this is like the Steve and Rebekah show is a thing.
I'm retired now from television, and basically an evangelist. I'm an itinerant pastor traveling the state as a guest teacher. Still leading Beds for Kids, a local ministry, and involved in a couple of other projects here.
How many kids, how many kids total? How many beds total?
We are shooting, God willing, by August, we'll hit the mark of 20,000 people placed in free beds.
Wow. Wow.
John?
John Patten, co-founder of Dion's and Tula's, and right now I'm working on special projects, still chairman of the board, and still pulling my hair out and going nuts.
So good.
Trying.
Major General Miguel Aguilar. I'm the Adjutant General for the New Mexico National Guard and the Acting Cabinet Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Hey, what does it mean if you're the aggregate general?
Did I say adjutant?
Adjutant.
Yes. What does it mean? I run the Guard for New Mexico. So
I just want the people that
Army
listen.
in the air, yeah.
And then I gotta probably say the right words so we, the listeners know.
I thought I misspoke. I thought you were trying to get me to get it
No,
right.
heavens, no.
I say it all the time. I hope I got it right.
So everyone in this room is a leader.
Yes. And Rebekah was a cabinet secretary at one time also.
Tourism, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Tourism. That's how we met. We met because Clay and I were hometown heroes.
New Mexico True Heroes.
True heroes. That's what we were. Yes. Hopefully we still are.
Some days. Hey,
And was it you or just your administration that came up with the phrase New Mexico True?
That was Secretary Jacobson, my predecessor, who was recently inducted into the New Mexico Tourism Hall of Fame for that.
Love that
Love
phrase.
that.
She got so much flack for that, and it turned out to be so amazing.
It did. It did. So I'm going to be the question asker, and the last panel, I want to switch it up so we're not asking the same exact questions, but a question that Clay and I came up with that I think is really good. What early experiences shaped your approach to leadership? And it can be from kindergarten, so just so you know. And what responsibility does a leader have to their community and others? So, kind of a two-part question. Rebekah,
Oh,
I'm looking at you, sister.
I think that like I can't really pinpoint an early leadership experience, but I'm a constant student of leadership. I'm 46 years old. I'm a CEO, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I think like even today, spending time with my staff outside in the name of like trying to boost our mental health and wellness, and just and being outside. And like pushing productivity aside and realizing that like that time was better spent with them than bottom lines, and I'm still not great at leadership. I think the hardest part about it is that like you have to trust that the people around you know what they're doing, and I struggle every day with thinking that I know better than they do. So we are working together to fix that, but at least I acknowledge and I'm learning how to really work with a team of leaders.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and what it really breaks down to is relationship, is building those relationships with folks and being able to lead people and get to know them.
It takes so much time to do leadership well. It would be a lot faster if we could just do it ourselves, but that's not leadership.
No.
And again, that's part of the journey of what we're trying to build.
That's right. What about you, Steve?
Well, I think, when you asked the question, I kind of stumbled, but really it goes back to young experiences in Boy Scouts and Little League, and then through high school athletics with, the people who stepped up into my life and were mainly very, very good examples. And then as I got into broadcasting, I had, a real interesting mix of really great and really horrible leaders. I mean, it just, and I think that you can learn as much from a bad leader as you do from a good leader. I think Rebekah mentioned that, she's a fan of studying leadership, and we can always learn from people who don't do it right, that, gosh, when my turn comes around, I don't want to be that kind of a leader.
That's good. That's good. What about you, John?
I think that's a good point, that, we learn from failure and we learn from success equally, I think. And so,
Yeah.
but I don't think failure is the right word. I mean, it's a word that we use in this country, but it's not right. I mean, it's just like, I like to look at it that I've never failed. I had a whole list of stuff that I did that didn't work out the way I thought it was going to. It was a surprise to me.
That's a very positive attitude, though. It's hard to bring up at the moment, right?
Yeah. I remember being in first grade, which I failed first grade, and I had this guy Bob that sat next to me in first grade, and second grade was right behind us, and we were both at the back of the class where all people that fail first grade and we had a calendar back there, and Bob had his protractor, and he was trying to tunnel into second grade from first grade.
You just made me flash back. I had two buddies as a little kid, half my size. Both of them failed first grade.
Yeah.
And anytime I'd bring it up, they'd punch me out. And I didn't fail, I got held back.
There you go.
Well, I didn't fail first grade. But, I think that, I've had a path of leadership, so I had great coaches and teachers in the small community I grew up that I think set the example. And then I got to go to New Mexico Military Institute as an 18-year-old and got into ROTC. And so for me, I think if you asked me through my state police career, through the Guard, and what I'm doing now is, I've been a student of leadership my entire life. I think that's all I've really wanted to be. And to get to the question about the community is, I think, I've spent my entire life working in public service. I mean, all I've ever really wanted to do is help my community and the nation. And so I think as leaders, especially as you've had opportunities, because there's no self-made success, right? There's someone that intervenes at some point in your life that allows you or helps lift you up to a place. And so I think as we all get a little older in life and we've experienced some success, it's making sure that we take that time to give that back to the community, whether it's helping kids, it's being involved in organizations, and really, talking in podcasts like this about where we've seen success and what difference, the opportunities that we had in life have meant to us.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. If you guys, and I asked this to the other group as well, but if you were to speak to the younger self, and whatever that is, it could be at 7, it could be at 18, it could be at 25 years old. If you were going to speak to your younger self, and you were going to give them advice that propelled them further in life, better in life, what would you say? And we can reverse it.
Yeah, I think I would tell myself what the Dr. Seuss book says, right, about all the places you'll go, and really for me, growing up in a small rural community, we grew up poor. It took me a long time to realize that I have the potential to be whatever I want to be. That the tools that God gave me allow me to grow to whatever I want to. And I didn't always have that confidence. And so saying, like, keep going. And that's when I talk to kids today, that's what I try to let them know is there's no one has an advantage over you. Even the disadvantages that you have, you can turn them into advantages.
That's right.
Because there are challenges that you overcome, they make you stronger. And so, like, push yourself as far as you're willing to, and the only thing that causes you to not to succeed in something is your will to do it.
I know that you work with some of the at-risk youth down in Roswell, and one of the things you always tell them is it starts today. No matter where you come from in your past, because we've talked a lot about that, and your advice to them is no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, tomorrow starts today.
Yeah, it's owning your life. So whatever it is that got them into that program, it's an at-risk program, is you had love, Sometimes it's hard, but you've got a staff that has put you through 22 weeks of this program. You've grown. Own the rest of your life. If you're gonna be successful or not, own it, because you have all the tools you need to be successful. So that's the message we give them all the time.
The younger John?
Well, you know, you're a general. I never argue with generals, but I'm a little
Major general.
major general.
That's
He's
pretty
a major.
major.
Even worse.
Right.
Even worse. I mean, one of the things I've noticed in life is that people push people to say you can be anything you want to be. And the truth is, everybody has a gift inside of them, and everybody can develop a certain way. But I see people a lot of times that are trying to do something where it's like pounding a round peg into a square hole, or vice versa, where they're trying to do something that they think in their head. Like, if I think back to me, my dream was to be a writer. Turns out, as a writer, I suck. So, you know, recognizing that and recognizing what my gifts were, and then how to develop the gifts that I have within me. So everybody's a little different, and everybody can develop to a high level, but it's figuring out what your gifts are. And sometimes it's not the thing that you dream about in your head, but it's what you're actually good at.
Yeah.
You must have been actually good at leadership, and maybe you had people, and I did too, I think we all have, that have helped us along the way. But it's figuring out where we fit in that and what we can do. I tend to be an emotional wreck some of the time, so I've surrounded myself with people that are pretty steady, that can calm me down.
Yeah.
Because I realize that me being an emotional wreck isn't the best way to leadership. It's a path that I go, wow, like you said, Steve, I don't want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
And I have that capability, believe me.
Yeah, well, and I hear you both, and you're both right. I mean, I've very often thought the past 10 years, one of our big problems is telling our kids, you can be whatever you want to be. Now, General, you're actually right that we can try to be anything we want to be. We have that freedom, that ability to chase our dream, a writer, singer, dancer, you know. And I cracked up because I found out that most of the people in radio and television really wanted to be performers, but they didn't have any talent. So we all ended up in broadcasting instead because it was close. But you know, you're both absolutely right and very wise in that. I spoke at the Highlands University commencement last week. And I told these very successful students at a key point, a big juncture in their life, be prepared to fail. I said, don't plan on it, but don't let it kill you when it happens and happens again. And I like to point out the well-known cases, Abraham Lincoln, Ray Kroc was, selling paper cups and playing piano at night to make ends meet when he first met the McDonald's brothers and eventually founded that chain. And Thomas Edison going through thousands of experiments that a lot of people would have looked at as failures. So, but I think that also, General, you point out something that it's almost like two different groups. That was a group of kids, well, they're young adults nowadays because nobody really graduates from college straight out of high school. But I think with people like you're talking about, I can really relate to, and we deal with so many of them in our beds ministry. When you come from a disadvantaged situation economically or socially, it's almost the opposite thing, is that you can't expect to fail. You have to understand that there's this potential and that this possibility that is inside you that you found almost through your failure in being able to build this monster called Dion's. And so many of these kids have never seen anything but generational failure that they have a hard time understanding it's possible for them.
I think the first thing that I would tell my younger self is don't get a credit card on your 18th birthday.
Amen.
The second thing though, like really kind of piggybacking off of what John said, is like really like taking the time to learn what you are good at, what your strengths are. I thought for the longest time, once I became a cabinet secretary, I thought because I was the communications director prior to that, so I was used to being a doer. And so when I became the cabinet secretary, I still felt like I can lead and do. I'm a great doer. Nobody can outdo me. And in this kind of pursuit of leadership and having access to some really incredible leadership training, being able to do a strengths assessment and learning that I'm actually a horrible doer. That my like follow through is terrible, and my ability to execute on all the things that I want to be able to do is like I'm a -5 on the do scale. So having that experience gave me the opportunity to understand what my strengths are. I'm an activator. Like if I say something's gonna happen, I'm gonna make it happen. Like I put words into motion. I'm a great communicator. I get people excited about the things that I'm excited about. So like just the permission to know what I'm good at gave me permission to let go of the things that I was not good at. And now it's really like about building the team around me and letting their strengths really shine,
Yeah.
making sure that they have access to the same understanding. The hard thing that I struggle with is that I am surrounded by a bunch of analytical people, and I am not an analyst. I'm like a big vision, future person.
But that goes back to what John was saying.
Yeah.
When he was saying, I'm an emotional wreck, so I
Yeah.
have to surround myself with people that are solid and keep me in line. And I think that that's another, part of leadership that we don't recognize a lot is, when you think of a leader, you think of one person leading a group of people, and the reality is a really good leader knows who to surround themselves with, and whether it be, I don't know, I think Clay and I are a really good pair. There are times Clay's like, calm down. Just because
I don't say it like that though.
me and Rebekah are a lot alike. I'm the activator. I literally wake up every morning and Clay is in bed and I just start. You know what I was thinking? What if we did and then in 10 years? And he's like, what are you talking about? We're like going to be dead in 10 years, But he pulls me back in and then he goes, okay, now really, what could we do? And then things start happening because I dream into, the next generation, and having that person that when we walk together, he can go, okay, let's go. He lets me loose. I'm like a little pit bull.
So I'm gonna call John out.
Uh-oh.
John. And it ain't about the Dion's Ranch again. Everyone's looking at it, they know what I'm talking about.
You must get that as much as I do about Girl Scout cookies. That's all anybody ever wants to say. Let's talk about Rand.
Girl Scout cookies with Dion's Ranch.
No.
Thin mints dips, just kidding.
John is capable of writing a book. So what we have found recently in leadership, and great leaders do surround themselves with where they're lacking.
Right.
And so anything is now possible if I can pull somebody else in that can pull my weakness. And I truly believe that when God said it ain't good for Clay to be alone, that he had Michelle in mind, and for those very reasons. And me and John, just so you guys know, about every month I call John and talk to him about writing a book. And we have got resources for John, so everyone hold him accountable. But I also believe that with General Aguilar's point, that if I know this about, and I'm picking on John a little bit, but I know John well enough to know that if he wants something done, me and John have talked about this, we both have some learning disabilities.
Yeah.
And it is a hard weakness that we have turned into strengths because we find other ways around it. But with that, I know you well enough that if you wanted to achieve something, like General Aguilar said, you would figure out who to surround yourself with and march forward.
Yeah, I think that's critical, is because who you surround yourself with is so important. If you want to be a good leader, then talk about other leaders and work for the right people and surround yourself with the right people. Even the people that work for me, it's very important that we have a community that we surround ourselves with, and I think that's critical to it. That's been a huge help for me. And also having, as General Aguilar said, a mentor. I've had, a half dozen mentors in my life, and they've made a huge difference on a one-on-one basis. Because the emotional wreck I was as a kid, and continued the thread through to my life today, is something that I work with and I could get better at, but it's always going to be there. I could ride home screaming at myself in the car and stuff. As long as I don't open the windows, nobody cares.
What I love also about this room is that everyone sitting in a chair has and knows how important it is to pour into kids' lives. John, you are probably the largest employer of teenagers in our state. My son actually works at Dion's, and before or after we knew you, and you didn't even know he was applying.
Yeah.
So John did not get him the job.
Yeah.
But, you know, General Aguilar, the programs that you pour yourself heart and soul into, Steve with Beds for Kids, Rebekah with Girl Scouts of America, and I just think about what does that say about leadership? We know that we need to be pouring into the next generation. We know that how hard it was for you, John, how hard it was for you, General Aguilar, growing up in a small town, not necessarily having those people to pull you up and to really show you what it looked like to be quote unquote successful. And I mean, Rebekah, every organization you get involved with, I'm just like, you're the one that got me involved with American Mothers, and whenever Rebekah gets involved in something, I'm like, I want to be in that. I don't know anything about
Because
it.
I'm really good about getting other people excited and the things that I'm excited about.
And then I go get people excited.
Yes, that's how we work.
That's how we work.
Yeah.
But I love that about all of you. And it just occurred to me as we were sitting here, I was like, wow, all of you guys pour into the next generation, and that really inspires. I know it inspires Clay as we do what we're doing, and we can call on you guys and just say, hey, come help us out. Right?
Yeah.
Hey, yes, by the way, we are very humbled by the
Yeah.
people we have in this room, and
Yeah.
that's not just something I say. So leadership, right? So we're going to kind of stay on that. What do you think the next generation needs to hear? You talk to yourself, right? Is that the same advice you would give someone else? If you were going to change the government, if you were the king of America for something, and you were going to change something in our society, what would you change, Steve?
The balance in my bank account. You know, what keeps hitting me as I'm hearing everybody talk and pertains to your question is, I think that the future leaders need to understand that you can and you need to lead without being in charge. Leadership really starts before you're in command.
That's
In
right.
general, I'm sure that a big part of your job is spotting these up and coming leaders. And you know, I mean, it starts with the first part-time job at Dion's.
Yeah.
If we're having the right attitude and realizing it's not, you know, I don't recognize any mentors that I had until I became a pastor much later in life, and I've been incredibly blessed since then. It was kind of like, you know, everybody for themselves in broadcasting, and nobody really reached out and helped me that much. And in ministry, it's been very different. And I see so much growth and so much encouragement. But when I look back at the simple level, like we talked at the beginning of Little League Baseball or even high school sports, there were people who came alongside and put their time and their talent and their treasure into my life. And you know, I didn't fulfill my dream of becoming a Major League Baseball player and an NFL star and a you know, center in the NBA at 5'9".
I wanted an NBA so bad, but I'm short, I'm slow, and I can't jump.
Yeah, but you know, that was kind of put in my heart early on in watching these people. They didn't really have anything in life. They were lower middle class working people. I mean, like where I grew up, a teacher was a huge success. That was well beyond what anyone in my family had ever accomplished. So I think pulling each other up is what it's all about, and that's where leadership really begins. And you can do it as a teen, even younger.
It's interesting to me on leadership when you talk about that is that, you know, we think of like the person who wants to be a leader. Sometimes they're not. Oftentimes they're not. Sometimes they are. In running Dion's over the years, one of the things Mark and I, who's the CEO now, have talked about is that, I forget the quote exactly, but it's in any situation, a leader will emerge whether designated or not. And that's not the person who stands at the front and screams and talks a lot. Sometimes Sometimes it's the person who's a little quieter, and it's the person who everybody goes to when they have a question, who everybody leans on because they trust them. So trust is a big part of leadership, and part of that is building the community around you, and people realizing that the way we rub against each other and the way what they expect from you is what they get. They're not shocked by that.
That's good.
That is.
Yeah, and I think that, Steve hit on a good point. I know that over my career, so I started as a patrol officer, became a major in state police. I started as a lieutenant, a major general. What I figured out as I've grown in organizations is that you think like, I can't wait till I'm the general, and then the world will just shape itself to what I need it to be. And what you realize,
Boy, that was a dream.
what you realize is it doesn't work that way. I mean, I spend more time influencing, because you've got, the General McChrystal book, like Teams of Teams. And so you become much more of an influencer. It becomes more difficult to get things done in an organization because you're not the doer anymore. Like, you can't just through sheer work get things done. And so what I would tell young leaders who want the world to change is that it's incremental, and that one of the things that I see a lot today that I think divides the nation is that we want the world to be like we want it to be. And it's not enough to have influence and to create or be able to talk about your side of things. You literally want everyone else to believe and be how you want them to be. And I think you have to have a sense of realism about that we're all individuals, we all have beliefs, and that we should have conversations about the world, but you can't expect the world to change exactly how you want it, or you'll always be unhappy.
One of the things I think that we're really gonna have to figure out as adults who do pour into kids are what adjustments are we going to need to make to meet them where they are. While the rest of the country runs away from teenage girls, I run towards them because A, they're my bosses, but also because there's great wisdom. But the pandemic had such a weird, a long-standing issue or impact on teenagers. I heard Bronco Mendenhall, the new coach for UNM, speak recently, and he was talking about for a year and a half, the bar was so low that the highest achievement for kids was getting out of bed and opening a laptop. That was it for a year and a half. That's all we asked them to do. And even today with teenage girls, when we're like, hey, are you gonna earn your gold award? Are you going to do this big community service project? You're a leader, the world is your oyster, you can do anything you want. And they're like, what I just wanna survive. Can you please stop putting all that pressure on me? So now we as adults are really gonna have to figure out what does the future look like for them? How do we help them tap into their leadership ability without putting so much pressure on them that they can be leaders if they want to? Because a lot of them, I think you guys are right, that the leader will emerge. But if you tell them that you can be a leader, there's a good possibility, especially with young girls. I don't know about if the same is for boys, but for young girls, they're going to shy away from that. So we need to figure that part of leadership out for the future.
I met with the state police, I met with Bernalillo Sheriff's Department, and I'm teaching leadership now, right? Or sales. And one of the major issues in all organizations today is understanding Generation Z. And so I'm trying to do a deep dive study, and there's not a lot of information out there, but as we go through, by the way, boys are exactly the same. Let's sell our cars so we don't have a car payment, and let's just live in a little tiny tough shed and we'll be all good. But there is some things to learn from that, right? We need to look at the positives in it. I think there's superpowers that Gen Z has that we as full-grown adults could probably learn a lot from. And at the same time, if we go back to the basics, is we've traveled around the world, which is my favorite thing to do, right? Work with kids and travel around the world, is that there's always the simple, people want to be loved, right? They want to feel valued. They want to feel secure, They want to have food, they want to have shelter, and you got to start from those basics no matter what we do. And I think as I look out across this table at you guys are providing that. And I also want to say, just because they say it, so I brought a team of junior high and high school to Puerto Vallarta on a mission trip, right? And my goal was to stretch them beyond. And so they had to give little devos at night and in the mornings. And these are kids that had a hard time standing up in front of anybody, like talking one-on-one, let alone within a large group. But I found if you do it right, I'm sure that the Girl Scouts of America does that right. If you start empowering them and you put those that aren't that uncomfortable first, that they stepped up. And even if it was a 2-minute Devo and the other kid was a 15-minute Devo, right? Devotional is what that means. The empowerment that 2 minutes that they suffered through and they stuttered and they staggered through changed their life. Like by the end of the mission trip, they were different kids. And when we brought them home, even their parents came to me and said, these kids are different. I don't know what you did. But it was you gotta take that step of faith. And I don't care how much it sucks, and I don't care how much you stagger and kick your way through it. Those 2 minutes changed their life. And I think in leadership, a lot of times we can't push kids over the cliff, but we gotta push them to the edge. And I don't know what that exactly means still, because we're dealing with our own children still. But I think we gotta keep a hand on their back and at the same time, be ready to catch them when they fall. But I also think as adults, the same things that apply to our kids apply to us, and we need to relearn it on a constant basis. You know what I mean? It's always a learning.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when you talk about the kid that spoke for 2 minutes that struggled to talk to kids, I mean, everyone was listening. You know, when you have people like me, Steve, and Rebekah that can just talk about anything at any time, and you know, folks are like, yeah, they're funny, they're hilarious, I want to hang out with them. But when someone who speaks that doesn't normally demand the stage, you're like, what did they say? And what they are gonna say, they've thought it through, and it generally is wisdom that you can walk away holding on to. So that also goes back to what, you know, John was saying, just being able to, a leader's going to emerge. There's going to be something that's spoken that you have to sometimes shovel through the words I say and go, not good, 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 not good.
I think with all of us, it's doing hard things, right? And so we're in the process of putting a pilot program together that the governor asked us to do for summer camp with some at-risk schools, and that one of the components that we really started to look at was, you know, what builds a resilient kid, and then how do we put them in positions to do difficult things, which is for some it may be learning to swim, it's taking them to a 50-foot rappel tower and do something that they wouldn't normally do, because I think we all learn at some point in our lives how to be uncomfortable, and until you do, everything's impossible. And so you know, really making sure that we take those opportunities as kids and adults to go out and do something that's hard for you, and the pride that you get from doing that, I think is really important.
And the thing that I think is interesting about that is that you don't know the impact that had right away.
Yeah.
It might take a couple of years before you really realize what happened to that person as they did that thing that was uncomfortable, and maybe they complained about it, maybe they didn't think, but maybe years later they go, hey, that made a difference in my life.
Yeah.
And you just can't always tell when we're having an impact on somebody the kind of difference that you make in the long run. It's a tricky thing.
No, I was in the military as well, and we were training with the 10th Mountain Division out of Bad Tolls, and that was for 2 months. And those 2 months, the stories from those 2 months, I use all the time in my life. It was life changing, and I was pushed beyond the limit. And when it's funny that it affected me immediately then, but it affects me today. Like when times get really, really rough, or I'm in a lot of pain, or I'm cold, or mentally you want to just throw your hands up. I remember those times and the comments that were made. I quote them to my kids all the time. you know, you're gonna pass out before you die, soldier. But there are times that it made a significant difference in who I was as a leader as well.
Yeah.
Because it was funny, because you're dealing with extreme personalities. You gotta remember, I'm a little older, so when they were not nice to you when you failed. And I'm not even gonna go into details. It was horrible,
Yeah.
right? But they were also there to catch you and support you. And I think that there's gotta be that balance. But great points.
You know, one thing that hits me is that you really can't be a leader unless you have people willing to follow you. And to me, so many leaders are out there on an island and they're not worthy of being followed. They don't live a lifestyle. They don't set an example. You can see their lack of integrity or their inability to teach or their basic inexperience, things like that. But again, in being a follower, you can learn to lead. You can help them to be better leaders without coaching them or doing anything obvious. And I think Rebekah's point that, we have to kind of step down and get on their level with the young people today without putting them down and trying to understand where they're coming from after COVID and their experiences of looking how crazy the world is today, but at the same time, not lowering our standards and expectations so that we can lift them up, which is what a good leader really should do, even if we're not the one in charge at the moment.
I think that's so true. Once I'm not going to name names here, but I was on the board of directors of a nonprofit, and my job, I was chairman, and my job was to help the person who was the leader. And I told him that you're charging ahead, you're smart, you have a lot going on, you have great direction, but look behind you, there's no one there. You're all alone. If people aren't following you, you're not leading. If you're just out there, like you said, on an island, and I see that so often from the guy that really wants to charge. In order to be a leader, you have to learn to follow.
And I think that so many of us never think of ourselves as leaders early on, but programs, scouts, sports, hopefully school, it's taught little by little. And I think that so often when we're dealing with disadvantaged youth, showing them that they have value to another human being, that they can help someone else out that is in even a more difficult situation than they are, has tremendous power and potential to grow their confidence.
Them knowing that they can help somebody, and that oftentimes is leadership. It's not always standing at the front and screaming and talking about the direction.
And helping them understand too that it's not just I don't want to say just, I don't want to dismiss it about developing leadership skills, but this generation is very in tune with their mental health as they need to be. There are things that this generation, even us talking about it with teenagers now, things that we never talked about when we were teenagers, I think there's still a lot to learn, but the idea of helping someone, not only is it helping them develop leadership skills, it's good for their mental health. We know so much now about gratitude, helping others, just simple things like being outside, the profound impact it has on decreasing stress and anxiety. And so we need to be talking about that a lot more as it's not just good for someone else, it's good for you in numerous reasons.
That's right. I always tell my kids that serving others is like a superpower. It's something that, really and truly, it doesn't take a whole lot. It's just, we're all designed to be able to do it, truly. Whether it's words, whether it's, I don't know, a drink, whatever it could be. Sometimes our service, we overcomplicate it. I have to go to the soup kitchen and I've got to, give this much time and that every other week and it's no, you don't. You don't have to do that. You can help your neighbor, you can help your mom, you can help, and I think that we overcomplicate sometimes.
Yeah, you could be nice to the kid that gets picked on in
That's
school
right.
all the time, that gets picked last for all the
That's right.
teams, or,
Mhm.
or that gets made fun of, and you can just be the child that steps out and says, you know what, I'm gonna be his friend.
That's
And
right.
I might catch a little bit of flack for it, but it goes all the way through the bed ministry. We've partnered with another ministry, You Turn for Christ, and these are men and women that have pretty much hit rock bottom and are rebuilding their life back through this program. And when they get to a certain level, we allow a few of them to participate in delivering some of the beds. And the good that they
Changes
get out
them.
of such a simple act of just unloading a bed and delivering it, and
Yeah.
and seeing these little kids be joyous and happy, and see the single grandmas that are raising them have tears in their eyes. It's powerful.
It is.
Big time.
Well, I think it's so powerful too for those folks, and what we've discovered with Zoe, the young ladies that we come alongside of, is there is this insane need for them to go back and to help people that they were just like.
Yes.
And I have dived deep with one of our clients, and I'm like, you're drowning. What are you doing? Like, you need to put on your oxygen mask first before you go help your addicted friend. You know, I know your heart is for addicts because you were, but you have a child and you need to secure, hers goes on for, you know, after yours, you know, and I think that, I get it. It's like they know, all I needed was somebody to help me. And I know that that's, you know, working with kids that are at risk, that sometimes they'll drown themselves, you know,
Oh, yeah.
trying to help someone else. So I think it's great that there is a, you know, a step-by-step approach to that, and that it doesn't have to be complicated.
Hey, we're running just a little short on time, so we're gonna go around the table, and if you were gonna talk to the whole world and give them advice on life as a leader, what would you say?
I have a good one. That leadership is a practice, like medicine and law. You are never, you never hear a doctor say, "Oh, I'm good. I don't need to keep learning about medicine, or I don't need to keep learning about law." You know, it's the same with leadership. That really, you get out of it what you put into it, and just committing to that practice of learning how to be better for others. The other little tidbit that I learned, that some days I'm better than others at remembering, is always before I walk into my office or before I walk into a situation. Actually, I do this a lot at home with my kids. What is the experience I want for my staff today? What is the experience I want for my family today? When I walk through the door, and really thinking about visualizing what is that experience for these kids or for my coworkers, and then trying to follow through with that.
So good.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
and Jesus called that the golden rule, you know, or we call it the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And in leadership, that just means focusing your mind to be the type of leader that you would want to have, that you would want to follow.
That's good.
That's good. I think a lot of it is look at yourself, and so often I see people that are trying to do something that's difficult for them. And instead of doing that, look, a lot of times people are really good at something and they don't know they're good at it. So developing that part of yourself and listening to others and being in service, because if you can follow, you can lead. But if you can't follow, you can't lead, because no one will follow you.
Exactly.
Ooh.
A t-shirt.
That's
It's
deep.
recorded,
Yeah.
so we'll have it.
That's deep.
You know what, we do I belong to an organization, and it talks about know yourself to lead yourself to lead others. And that's really, it's just, you really do need to seek and find out who you are, what your strengths are, and then surround yourself with the people who fill those gaps and those weaknesses.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, well,
So I love what Rebekah said, and I think that, I've spent my entire, even today, in every night before I go to bed, I put on a podcast and I learn something. And Simon Sinek, and I reach out to like leaders that you wouldn't expect a military officer to reach to. So Brene Brown, I love listening to what she does.
Yes.
But so it's that, and then I think the other thing is that you always have to remember that leadership is about people. And when you run an organization, whatever it is, that they are going to have all of the life events and things that happen to every single one of us.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll be high, sometimes they'll be low, and having the empathy and the understanding of those things is what will lead them to build the loyalty that you need, and the trust in an organization that will be there for them, when they need them, and will also be there for the organization when the organization needs them. I think that's critical that people understand as leaders.
So good.
So good.
So, one of the things that I do know is that none of you guys are very bossy. There's so many people that claim to be leaders, but they're nothing but bosses. And true leaders, they carry the weight of the people who are under them. And everyone in this room has a lot of weight on your shoulders. And we're just thankful. We're going to end it with, at the end of every mission trip, when I bring the kids back, or the adults, they have to give me a word. And if you're going to give me a word that's going to propel me and you into the rest of this year, just one word, what would it be? Go ahead, John.
Practical.
Practical. Steve?
Better.
Rebecca?
Dion's Ranch.
Give me your word. Give me
It
your
was two.
word.
That was 2 words.
That's 2 words.
The word that I'm really focusing on is humility.
Yeah, tolerance.
Tolerance. So good. Well, we have a room full of true leaders that are making a difference not only in the lives of New Mexico, but the world. We want to say thank you. And what a great little session.
Yes.
And we will see you on the better side of you.
You used Steve's word.